Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. And I love it, listeners. Let's get it today. And so much fun talking behind the scenes with our guest today and her sharing her expertise. And before I get too excited, because this is going to be an incredible show, you definitely need to get out a notebook. But I wanted to say thanks, which I usually start out that way, because we're blessed, to be able to do this. And Mike and I started this show to just help, one or two people. And those one or two people were us. And somehow we're listened to now in 49 countries, 721 cities. And just want to say thank you. If you're a new listener, thanks for giving us a shot. This show is part of a nonprofit. The nonprofit is called C4 Leaders, and we're the only nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. We also write children's books, obviously host a show, and then we use the most amazing handmade, hand-tossed sourdough. That's right, baby, sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. So if you're interested in checking us out in that space, just go to Pizza Days, and it's DAYS.org. So let's get in. We're season 4, episode 13. We have Doris Jackson-Shazier coming from Clermont, Florida, and she is definitely going to inform, inspire, and transform your life today. She's already done that for me in probably the 5 minutes we were talking off air, and I always like to direct people first right out of the gate where they can find her. And she has a couple of sites. The first one is Shazier, and it's SHAZIER coachingconsult.com is the first spot. And then the second one for her new book is Doris Jackson-Shazier, and DorisJackson.SHAZIER.com. So about our guest, Doris is a distinguished leadership coach, people management consultant, author, and accomplished leader with over 2 decades of dedicated experience in fostering organizational growth, transformation, and excellence. Boom, that's just a whole bunch in itself. Renowned for her strategic acumen and collaborative leadership approach, Doris has consistently delivered tangible results for clients across diverse industries. Her coaching is specialized in parenting, life, executive, and neuro-linguistic programming. Doris's career spans across leadership roles in prominent organizations where she has led teams as large as 10,000. I can't even imagine that. And spearheaded critical projects. Her hands-on experience navigating complex business landscapes has honed her ability to identify opportunities, mitigate challenges, and craft effective solutions aligned with clients' goals. And I got a little parentheses here, should have you running to be president, especially after you're going to come out. Actually, I'm going to throw you a crazy question in the show here with us. So get ready for that. We're not done, Doris. Just wait for it. If that was not enough, Doris recently released her inspiring new book, Raising Justice: Lessons Learned from Motherhood, a nonfiction masterpiece offering readers a transformative journey towards deeper connections and spiritual growth within their families. Man, I just love that right there. That's what the world needs. In Raising Justice, Doris draws from her own experiences as a mother and daughter, weaving together personal anecdotes, poignant reflections, and timeless biblical truths to illuminate the path toward healthier, more fulfilling relationships. With empathy and grace, she addresses common challenges faced by mothers and daughters alike, from communication breakdowns to conflicts and misunderstandings, offering readers practical strategies for overcoming obstacles and fostering love, understanding, and forgiveness. Man, Doris, thanks for sharing your many gifts with the world, for raising 4 beautiful children, and for being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a powerful introduction. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure and my honor. And you have such a beautiful smile. And listeners, if most of the listeners just tune in through other media, but we do have a small YouTube that nobody can ever find. But I would say check this one out. And it's just at C4 Leaders. And then it's goofy why nobody can find it. 707 is our YouTube But yeah, Doris just has a beautiful smile, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I loved it. So it's going to be a great show. And Doris, so we always start out with a thought of the day, which is a quote I picked after researching you. And this is from your buddy, Brene Brown. And here it is. The truth is, belonging starts with self-acceptance. Your level of belonging, in fact, can never be greater than your level of self-acceptance, because believing that you're enough is what gives you the courage to be authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect. Why would I pick that for you?
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Number one, that's a really great quote. But number two, I think that I really, really align with that. This place that I'm at in my life right now, it required such a level of self-acceptance. To have the courage to walk away from a pretty successful career. I went through the ranks. I made it to senior director of field leadership and development. God allowed me to go into the rooms that I desired to be in. And when I got there, I realized that it wasn't for me. And it was tough because you aspire and you work so hard to get into a space and you think that that's where I belong. That's the room. I should be talking to C-suite executives. I should be doing those things. And I got in that room and I had to realize that although it was okay to want to be there, and now that I've seen it, it's not me. And I had to love myself enough, have enough real, acceptance to recognize that who I am in God and who God says I am matters more than being in certain rooms. So when I think about belonging, I think about not just being included, not just being invited, not just making it into the room, but being asked to dance while you're there. That's what really makes you feel like you belong. And I don't know, like I'm at a real place in my life where that level of acceptance I have for myself is bigger than sometimes belonging or needing to belong in certain places. So I love that quote. I think it prioritizes things in the right order.
Man, yeah. I got a couple of rounds of goosebumps already, and I love it because I frequently get these, and it just tells me that I'm alive and I'm right where I should be. And I love asked to dance when you were there. Where do you think you got the courage to take that step or to have that desire to achieve what you did and to be at a place where I'm sure you're paying your bills, doing your thing, and we get comfortable?
6-figure salary walked away from me.
Yeah, you get comfortable. Where do you think you got the courage, to say, you know what, there's something more inside me that I need to be on a different dance floor, so to say, doing my thing elsewhere?
I would say it was partially courage, and I think it was it was God's intervention. I think for me, I always known God had showed me and the things that I would do. I dream about things, and I'm like, I knew that certain things would happen for me eventually. I just didn't know when or how I would get there. And I think that I was living a little bit in comfort. And it just didn't seem logical to walk away. You got a good job. You have these things. Everything's kind of going well. Why walk away? Well, in 2021, I, had COVID. I was hospitalized for 7 days and on oxygen treatment for 3 months. And I almost lost my life. And in the quietness and not being so busy and not being so preoccupied, I think I was able to hear God's voice a lot more. And I knew that it was time to start building and making moves to do, to live differently or to have the life that I'm supposed to have. So a little bit of it was courage, but a little bit of it also was being sat down and sitting in quietness to really hear God's voice. I didn't answer immediately. The right set of circumstances happened to where my mental health started being impacted in the corporate world. And I had to reprioritize. It's like, okay, you're a mother of 4, you're a wife. I've been with my husband for over 20 years. And who I am and what I do are two different things. I am not this title. I am not this job. I am a mother. I am a wife. Like, I'm the titles that people can't take away from me. And I really had to align my actions with that thought process. So a little bit of courage, a little bit of God intervening, and then really getting honest with myself and aligning my actions with my goals and my thoughts. Because I knew I was all those things, but I was getting up every day and doing another.
Yeah. So just so you know, I'm not on my phone. I'm writing notes. And, that's why my head's down. Yeah, I'm always trying to learn, but I sir, before you use the word, I put divine intervention.
It definitely was.
For sure. And then I love how you said you took a negative and made it the most positive thing and used it as a crucible in your life to be like, all right, it's go time. The right set of circumstances impacted my mental health. And I interpreted that as you're working in that space and it came at your expense, and these right set of circumstances were all the wrong things going.
Oh, it was all the wrong things. Yeah. I had a boss who told me I wasn't a good speaker. I wasn't a good writer, that they didn't understand how I could lead people after working for the company more than a decade. And I was like, this is spiritual warfare. When someone kind of comes and I know what God told me I am, and you come and quote exactly the things that I already know that I am to me as if I'm not, this is definitely the enemy at work here to trying to discourage me. So I have to be on to something. I've got my first management position at 19 years old. All I've ever did was manage people. Like, I've managed people my whole adult life. If I don't know anything, it's how to lead a team or build a team. And then at this point in my juncture in my career, someone's telling me that, I don't know if you lead people or a coach. How do you coach? I'm like, I've been employed here for 14 years and promoted 5 times due to my ability to coach. What's happening right now? And so, yeah, it was the right set of crazy. Like, it was the right set of crazy happening. And I was just like, okay, you knew I wouldn't leave on my own, right? You knew it. Let's make this crazy here. And so that you can identify that this is not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, but see, we're going to move on, but I just want you to hear from somebody that doesn't know you. I love how you it really jumped out at me, the right set of circumstances. I mean, it's just a different way of looking at the challenges that you were going through that I'm sure you share, that you probably don't even know. They just ooze out of your pores, and it's who you are. But it's pretty powerful to hear. And then now to hear, okay, here's all the craziness that was going on. But from somebody else just listening to you, yeah, the right set of circumstances led me down this other path. And I just knew it was my time, and you didn't, look at so much, all the craziness. You say, no, all right. Hey, I know who I am. And I know, what I stand for. And I'm going to go chase my dream and do my thing. But let's move on from that, very broad question. You can take it any which way you want. I just want the listeners to get to know you a little bit. But what was life like growing up for you?
Oh, so interesting. All right. So I grew up in Miami, Florida. I like to tell people the first 48 Miami. So if you ever watched the show on A&E, the first 48, in which it follows homicide detectives, and they have 48 hours to solve the case. And so they have a series that's featured in Miami. That was the exact neighborhood I grew up in. I have a cousin that has his own episode. So I grew up in the rough part of Miami. I've seen someone murdered before as a teen. I've attended more funerals than I probably should have. I grew up in this real an interesting dichotomy of, I'm in the inner city, I'm exposed to a lot. However, I also had a grandmother who protected me as well as she could. So I have teen parents. My mom and dad, they lived in Orlando. I lived in Miami with my grandmother, my dad's mother. And yeah, it's like in hindsight, I can see how I was protected in that environment. So grateful for that. But yeah, grew up very inner city, latchkey kid, came home while my grandmother was at work, helped prepare meals at about 10, 11 years old, was given a lot of responsibility. But what it did was it really lit this fire and like this desire to just be more, to have more, for me. But yeah, I grew up in the city, in the inner city area.
Mm. Man, it sounds like grandma was somebody pretty special in guiding you during that time.
Yeah, she was very powerful, not perfect, not perfect. I would be lying if I say I didn't have to heal from some childhood trauma, but powerful, protective. Um, she just didn't allow anything, and I couldn't get it then, but man, am I grateful for it now because now I see the protection in it.
Mm-hmm. All right, I appreciate you sharing that, and definitely it paints a picture, that's part of your story. So yeah, thank you for that. The show is called Life's Essential Ingredients, and you coach and manage people, and have been doing this for many, many, many years. And don't want to get too personal, but kind of behind the scenes for you, I want to put this question in the context of, how do you manage? Because I know you got a lot going on. You got 4 kids. You're an author now. You're got your own business, and you're married, and all this other stuff going on. But what are those ingredients in your life on the daily that allow you to be Doris, and to have that fulfillment because you have these ingredients that are part of your life? I don't know if I'm coming across here.
I completely get what you're saying.
Okay.
So here's what I would say. I live a good portion of my life in duality, I would say, because I grew up in inner city. By the time I went to high school, I chose to kind of get bused into a school in a more affluent area. So I grew up in inner city, but I went to Coral Gables High. And then I got a full scholarship, and then I went to Florida State University, a predominantly white school. And so I grew up where I could be one person at home, but I needed to be a different person in other spaces. And I lived most of my life that way. I've made it through corporate, I think, with almost leaving parts of me at home and being someone at work in order to appeal or satisfy whatever the majority is. And so the space that I get to live in now, and I would say probably the last 5 to 7 years, is slowly but surely that self-acceptance, that knowing who I am kind of creeped in, and it allowed me to streamline who I am as a person. So I don't have to be someone when I go certain places and then be another person when I'm at home, or I can relax, or I can speak a certain way here and speak another way there. But I used to code switch very often. And some of it was just survival because that's what was expected of me. And so the space that I live in and what keeps me doing it right now is, number one, I'm authentic. A lot of the energy I wasted on code switching and trying to be one person at home and work is now exerted in a different way because I am me no matter where I go. And I think we have to get comfortable with who we are. Another thing I do is I streamline my processes. So one of the things that I teach, especially to women leaders, is how to create high accountability and high morale at work and in life. How can we use some of the same systems and practices and apply them in both spaces so we don't feel like we have to be one person, one place, and another person, the other place? So at work, I used to have like development plans for my managers or the people who work for me. Well, I have those for my kids too. I develop them in the same type of manner. We have goals. We talk about natural consequences for our actions. We talk about the unattended consequences of our actions. But I speak to them, and I'm cultivating them in a way that, yes, I'm raising children, but I'm also raising adults. They're going to be adults the majority of their life. And so what I've done is I use some of the same practices in both space. I'm a nurturer at home, but I'm also a nurturer in a workplace. I build those relationships and I focus on morale in both areas. But the biggest advice or the biggest thing I would tell people that works for me is I execute the same way, whether I'm in the workplace or the business or I'm at home, and it's helpful.
Did you see a big difference in your energy level when
Yes.
you were able to not have to be these two different people, even though you were the same? But I fully understand what you're saying, but it had to be freeing to just be like, hey, here's who I am, and I'm just coming this way.
It definitely was freeing. I like to tell people, especially as an African American woman, like we do protective hairstyles. And I went almost 10 years without getting braids because, someone had made a comment to me that it could impact my ability to be promoted. That I wanted to make sure that I presented a certain way. And this person had great intentions by telling me that they wanted to see me promoted, which is why they told me. But imagine what that does to my psychology as a person, knowing that something I like could count me out of the room. But I went along with it for almost 10 years until I got to a certain place of, well, if that's what counts me out the room, then oh well. Or do I even want to work for the company that counts me out of the room? But it took a while to get that level of confidence. So once I got that confidence, yeah, it took a lot of extra stress off of me. It took a lot of extra second guessing and thinking, because I am willing to pay the price to be me. And if that means I don't go into some places, I don't get into certain areas, I am perfectly okay with it.
I'm getting goosebumps just from that statement right there. And I hope we can continue. Sorry if this sounds a little ignorant, but continue to create a world that, allows people to just come as they are and to be seen, heard, and loved. And that's our mission as a nonprofit. We're just trying to create the space for people to come as they are. And hopefully we can celebrate that and realize that there's so much, for everybody, and so I love, and I'm so glad that you're in that space, because everybody needs to see that. Let's get in, it's going to sound a little bit goofy.
Okay.
But it's not crazy, but I hear, and just in listening to you, I didn't know so much. I knew you had 4 kids, but didn't know how you grew up and everything. But just in hearing how you live your life and what the ingredients are, I just, am writing down family. Yeah. So I don't want to just go over that, because it sounds like they're at the top of your list of who you are, and knowing that your parents were young and then you went to live with your grandma who was busy, and obviously you've made the choice to create something different, for your kids and things. And just highlight the importance, and maybe I don't know if harmony is the right word, but just this balance, this harmony that you have in doing everything that you do, but still being there to give to your family, and your kids. Because sometimes I think it comes at an expense. I know for me personally, when I was working 3 or 4 jobs and coaching, and I was blessed to coach my kids a good chunk of the time, but a lot of times I would come home and I didn't have anything left, and that's just not the way to be. But it sounds like, your family is just everything to you.
It really is. When I talked about aligning my goals and my priorities with my actions, that was one of the things that was top of mind. Everything that I was doing was for my family. So in my book, Raising Justice, I actually chronicle my journey as a confused 19-year-old college student that finds myself pregnant, and the journey of me now raising a 19-year-old college graduate. She graduated college with her bachelor's in business earlier this year. And I talk about kind of like, you hear about my family, you hear about the relationship that I cultivated with my daughter. You hear about me parenting in a way that I wasn't parented. And it's hard. It is hard when you fight instincts, you fight generational curses, or you're trying to behave in a way or that, may not, number one, feel natural, but number two, it wasn't the way that you were treated. And so I was a very conscious parent, or I am a very conscious parent. But in that book, I really talk about, just man, like the level of confusion I felt of being pregnant, and then the journey to now seeing this little girl grow up. Her name is Justice, so it's quite literal. Of seeing Justice grow up and become this 19-year-old with her bachelor's degree. And I would tell you, it's high accountability, high morale. It's about holding myself accountable, holding my children accountable. I set standards with them. I made sure to give them the things that I didn't have, but I gave them a little bit of what I did have because I believe that's what made me me. But then high morale. And that's the relationship part. That's the reward part. That's the recognition. Those are all the other things that balance out those level of expectations and standards that I have, for my family. Mm. And so even though I was in a career, I've always been a high level communicator. So with my children, they know that I'm working and some days I'm traveling 3 days out of the week. I make sure the groceries are in the house before I leave. I always cook the day before I leave. Laundry is done. My husband's a great cook and it helps. So that helps out a lot. They know when I'm back, what to expect, but I'm communicating it. There's a calendar that tells them where I'm going to be each day, which day I'm going to be back, all of their activities, but just balancing those things. And so I think that's what it takes. It takes. So family is really, really important, but having that ability to have high standards and expectation, but balancing that with a great relationship in a way that I communicate with them has created just a really good balance for our family.
I love it. I love it. Let's get into the book. That was a good little segue, and definitely wanted to give you some time to educate the listeners that there's an amazing book out there. And again, it's called Raising Justice. And congrats on that. First of all, I think there's so many people that want to write a book. Everybody has a story or stories inside them. But sometimes it's hard to find the time. And so you knocked that out. And how good did it feel to get your author's copy? And you're like, oh my God, this is real.
It was amazing. I've started 10 books and never finished one. I started writing my first book at 15. I always knew I wanted to be an author. I always knew this, right? And again, got distracted and distracted in some good ways here, but really coming into a season and let me tell you just how God is in the midst of this, right? I knew that it was on my checklist. Once I left corporate, finally, I'm going to publish a book. But I had about 3 or 4 books and I'm like, okay, which one? Because I know all of these are going to be good. Which one should I go with first? And so what was really pressed upon my heart is leadership inside out. Start from you and then work your way out and these other topics and subjects. And the thing that's closest to me really is, being a mom. I like to tell people motherhood was my first leadership position. And sometimes people don't think about motherhood as leadership or parenthood as leadership, but no, we're leaders in our home. And so I wanted to start with Raising Justice. And I had friends who told me, no, you're a leadership coach. Come out with this one first. And I'm like, no. I'm staying with this one. This is closest to my heart. And the timing of it was just amazing because when I started to focus in on it, I realized that I was exactly the same age, like literally put the book down for a while, came back to it. And Justice was the same age I was when I was pregnant with her. And so I was like, oh my God, I can release this book. And I released the book on my 20-year anniversary of being a parent, which is her birthday. And so as I was going through this journey, it felt like the birth all over again. Like it felt like the pregnancy all over again. It was such a full circle moment and I rewrote the last chapter because I thought the book ended when she graduated high school. And as I was sitting at her college graduation at 19 years old, I realized like, oh my God, okay, God, I see it. 5 years ago, I named the last chapter Our Graduation. And here I am, I've graduated in life, and now I'm seeing her graduate too. And so this is what our graduation looks like, to see her at the same age I was. Not pregnant, not confused, not the feelings that I felt, but a whole person walking across the collegiate stage and just doing good in life. And so I like to tell people the beginning and the end, because really the good stuff is in between. You're going to see this 19-year-old that's outside of what I thought was an abortion clinic.
Mm.
That's how the book starts. I'm outside of an abortion clinic because I just knew there's no way I can continue. No way. I'm on a full scholarship here. First person in my family go to college. What am I thinking? Two, me sitting at the graduation of the child that shouldn't have been here. It is a powerful testimony of resilience, of love, of grace. A powerful testimony of what God's grace looks like. I pray 4 specific prayers in the beginning of the book. Now you have to read for that one. And he answers every single one of them for very specific things. And so I tell people this book is for women. It's for especially teenagers. When you think about encouragement, or young adults, it's for men who really want to understand the women in their life or the mother-daughter relationship, because we talk about the way she's challenged me growing up and how I've handled that. And Justice and I has a really close and a great relationship. And I mean, it's my book, but it's a good book. I'm biased, but I'm telling you, it is a good book.
Well, it's heartfelt, and it's your life, and it sounds amazing, incredible. Justice, graduating at 19. I'm not good in math so much, but I think you graduate high school when you're 18 most of the time. And so obviously she was getting after it probably in high school and taking classes while she's still in high school, and like, hey, I'm here for a higher purpose too. And I got to get this degree so I can get going on and doing my thing. And I think her birthday is July 3rd. Is that when your book came out?
June 27th.
Okay, I thought.
June 27th is her birthday. It delayed a little bit on Amazon, but June 27th is her birthday. And what's so interesting is I didn't have to push her. All I had to do was support her. It was what she wanted to do. She was a smart kid, and so she started college while in high school, and then she went off to a university at 17. But she's just been a really good kid. All of my kids, I've been very fortunate. But I use the same type of, I guess, framework. It's high accountability, high morale. And then I kind of customize based off of their personality. I have a child that's graduating this May. My senior, he's a senior right now. His name is Dion. And, he's a little bit different. So he doesn't have the same college aspirations, but we're looking into what type of trade and field that he wants to go to. But he has a part-time job, but I'm teaching him workforce etiquette, how to shake a hand, great eye contact, but the different things that are going to help him to be good in this world. So I have a little bit of a different approach with all of them, but we have high standards and great relationships.
I love it. And, I love your methodology, your framework of just, your accountability, high accountability, high morale. And
that's coming out.
It's
going to be one of my books.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to move on, but it's just, those 2 words are just invaluable now, always. But I mean, more and more, I think the accountability piece, we've just there's so much, I think, piled on that I think that has gotten lost. And so I think it is a great gift that you can give to your children and to yourself, to hold yourself accountable. Again, listeners, we're on with Doris Jackson-Shazier, and if you're interested in her book, it's on Amazon, but the book has its own site. Again, it's just her name, Doris Jackson-Shazier, and it's SHAZIER.com. So you make sure you get on there and check it out. And I know if you order it through her site, she'll sign it and autograph it and send you some love coming from her. So make sure you get on and check that one out. I do want to ask you one question, not so much about the book, but a practical tip for communication, because you obviously have great experience with that, but maybe there's a listener that's struggling with their teenage daughter or son and they're just not on the same page. And I don't mean to sound like an old guy, and I could be totally jacking this whole thing up right now. So if I lose you, I apologize. But one of the things in me that I've noticed is the devices that are incredible and serve as a really good tool for us, I think, have hijacked our amygdala a little bit and cause us to be a little bit reactive with things. And I think in some communication challenges, even those we're just trying to give feedback maybe, but there's a pretty quick, like, no, I'm
knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah. And I think that causes just everybody to get off on the wrong foot, so to say, because even though I'm coming at you, with something that I think is pretty simple, and then you come back at me with something that kind of knocks me back when I say, wait a second. And then I say, okay, well, now it's on, and I think there's got to be a better way. So is there, what tips are you following?
I'm following exactly. You're right on track.
So,
you're in the right space.
Okay.
You're right there. My biggest advice that I would say is, number one, suspend judgment. Suspend judgment. As parents, we have to be better listeners. And I have to catch myself. I'm a little bit better at it than my husband is, but my husband is getting really good at it too, is not to react. Like, let's suspend judgment here. And so I've learned it in the workplace, because sometimes if you give people enough rope, they're usually hanging themselves. So I've learned how to be a little bit patient. And so I don't react to everything, especially right away. And what that has done for me is my kids will come to me about everything. And typically if something's going wrong, like we had something, my son pulled a weird prank and it backfired on him. He came to tell me first. Because they know that I'm not going to react right away. Like, I'm going to suspend judgment. I'm going to seek to understand, but I'm going to hear them out. And I think that's where we mess up sometimes as parents. Like, before they can finish their statement, we're already talking. So my biggest advice is, number one, suspend judgment and hear them out. And even sometimes I have to break the conversation and say, hey, all right, let me digest what you just said for a second. Like, I'll be right back. I don't feel the need to solve all their problems. I don't feel the need to give them quick answers unless it's a high urgency situation. I don't feel the need to not let them sit in things for a little bit, because sometimes we need to. Silence allows for a little bit of reflection and for us to further think whatever through. And I give that to them.
Yeah, I guess you're answering. I love those tips, and they're incredible. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I wrote down role model because I guess I'll give you an example that just happened for me. I told you I was looking tore up, when and listeners, Doris wanted to get on. There was a little confusion around the time, and she got home and I emailed her, hey man, I'm moving dirt. I'm all tore up. I need a shower and all this and that. And then while I was moving dirt, I had my younger daughter out there. And I wasn't all the way clear with where I wanted her to put some of that dirt. And so she just started kind of moving it around all over the place. And I says, I'm thinking there's this border that was there to where the dirt would go. And in my mind, that's where the dirt's going to go. She started moving it all over the place. And so I just came at her with like, hey, what's going on? How come we didn't keep it within the border? Oh, well, you didn't, so immediately she hollered back at me. And I guess to talk out loud and answer my own question and to get back to the role model is I just need to role model to her in that situation of not judging and just, okay, it is what it is. We'll have to just let it go. Instead of saying, hey, well, didn't you see the kind of the outline of where it was supposed to go? Not that it was any big blow up, but it definitely didn't have to be anything. And it turned into something. And then a lot of those somethings turned into something else, Yeah. And so anyways, let's move on. Let's get into what you do a little bit as far as your coaching and consulting. And I know you have, well, you kind of been in leadership your whole life and managing people and coaching. And I saw on your website, you have this 4-step process that's part of what you do. Is that a good place to start things and provide some education?
Well, yeah.
The create safe spaces, needs-based analysis, all that stuff.
So yeah, that's kind of my approach when I'm consulting and how I do it. One of the things that I'm very focused on, and I guess it's a part of that suspending judgment, is creating psychologically safe environments. I want people to feel comfortable talking to me, sharing with me, challenging, knowing that they can make a mistake, but creating very vulnerable moments. Because sometimes, again, I meet leaders and they want to read their resume, they want to tell what's going right, or what's wrong is always someone else. And most of the times, I'm telling you, it's the leader. Like most of the times when we have people problems, there's legitimate people problems, but there's issues within our leadership or things that we need to hone in and do a better job in how we lead others. But oftentimes leaders just don't raise their hand and say, I'm not good at this, or I'm a micromanager. Like it's never happened that someone just came out and said that. Their team tells me that, but they wouldn't say that. So I do begin by creating these safe spaces so that people can share vulnerably, so we can get to the root cause. And then once we have, identified, root cause, we create a plan together. I am not, and depending on how a person wants to utilize me in the consulting space, yes, I come in as the expert, I make suggestions, I craft the plan. But as your coach, it's a little bit different. It's more of a supportive role. I want to understand your goals. You're kind of in the driver's seats, and then maybe I'm the co-pilot. I'm there just to help you, or be a companion along this journey with you. But you really have all the answers. I'm just kind of helping you to remove maybe some of those mental roadblocks that's hanging you up from being the best that you could be. And so depending on whether I'm consulting or I'm coaching, I put on a different type of hat to support the person.
I love it. I love it. And Mike and I would call that just reading the D as far as the basketball coaching goes. But adapting to what's going on. I should have asked this before, but how do you define leadership? And has your definition of that, as you've matured and grown and learned, has that changed over time?
I think it has evolved. I think as a young leader, leadership to me was more about authority. It was the title. It was the system. It was wherever I am in the chain of command, like that made me the leader. And as I have evolved, I realized that it's so much more. It's about influence. It's about relationships. It's essentially getting people to do what you want them to do, and they like doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what leadership is, and that's what good leaders are able to do. It's about intentionality. It's how do you, again, balance accountability and morale. I've met a lot of people who they can either hold you to an expectation and not have any type of relationship with you, or they can have a wonderful, great relationship with you and don't know how to hold you to any standard. And I think real leadership is about your ability to do both.
I love that. And I got to go now. I got to go because we've been talking so much about accountability. How do you define that? And then more so, maybe you have an example of one of your clients that you've coached, but how do you implement that? When there's just maybe got an employee that just keeps coming late or just not pulling their weight or just bringing the morale down of the whole team that they're part of. How do you hold people accountable within that space?
So for me, how I define accountability is it's the ownership of the outcomes of your responsibility. So sometimes people, I would say, they think of accountability as responsibility, meaning the task at hand. And no, that's just your responsibility. When you're fully accountable to your responsibility, that means that you're willing to own the outcome. So if this goes bad, I own it. And if it goes good, I own it. So that's kind of how I define accountability. Now, how do I hold people accountable, or how do I teach people to hold others accountable? It's more so of having them to apply certain strategies to the way that they build relationships. So I would have them, how do you set the goal up front, or give role clarity, help people to understand what their role is and how they impact? Then how do you put your follow-up protocols together? So how do you guys agree on what follow-up will look like over an extended period of time? And then how do you reward people or recognize people for their efforts? So as they are trying, maybe they haven't got to the finish line yet, but what does the conversations and interactions look like as they are putting forth effort to get to the goal? And then how do you reward people once they meet the goal? And that's how, if you can use a framework with how you set the expectations and clarity around it, how you follow up on what you expect, how you recognize effort, and then how you reward the outcome when you see it. That is the framework for good accountability.
I love it. And that would lead perfectly into my next question for you is just fulfillment. And I'm guessing you helped a client achieve what you just talked about right there. For you personally, how do you, maybe that was it, maybe you just ran through and your client's like, oh man, they call you up and they're so fired up. Hey, everything we've been working on, I just did it and it worked, and, things are good. But how do you find and define fulfillment in your role, as coach, as business owner, and author, and all these different spaces that you kind of travel through?
Yeah, I've had, first of all, it's ongoing. I'm still figuring out how to define those things because it's a lot different than what I've been accustomed to over the 20 years. I had a scorecard, I had reporting, I had a boss that told me whether I was doing well or not. And in this space, I don't have some of those elements. And so what I do is I try and consistently set realistic goals. I remember when I first started with this book, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do 500 in pre-sale, and then I'll do, I'll be bestseller in a year, the other 10,000, because I didn't understand the scope of numbers and how books work. I'm used to working in corporate and having a $10 million goal. So my numbers was just a little bit skewed, right? And then I realized, and I Googled, and I saw the average author sells 250 copies in a lifetime. And I was like, wait, okay, hold up. So I have to kind of, what I do now is I consistently do a little research around everything so that I set realistic expectations for myself, because I can be very just grand, just especially when it relates to numbers, because I'm so used to dealing with like millions of dollars in sales goals. So I've had to really adjust my mindset around that. And so that's kind of what I've done to help me in the author space. Now, with my clients is I always begin in our consultation, I have them dream a little bit with me. And I ask them to really, let's talk about what your expectations from receiving this service. And so I'm really good about, once we're nearing the end or we're closing out or I'm offboarding that person, that I really take time to go back to the beginning and say, have we realized the goals that we set in the beginning? And so that's always very, very helpful to be able to do that.
Love it. I love that word, dream.
Yeah, I tell them to dream a little bit with me. I noticed one of the things that I think I did that didn't work for me in the beginning is I focused on people's pain points, and I focused on how people were struggling. And I'm like, yeah, if you're struggling at this, I can help you with that. And what I realized is that I kept attracting clientele that was struggling because that's all I was speaking to. And then when I started speaking to people's dreams and their outcomes, and if you want to be able to have the right type of balance, if you want to be able to have a business that flourishes in this way, then let's connect. And what I did was I found people who were willing to invest in their dreams.
Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah. And such a different way for you to approach the people that you want to work with,
Yeah.
which I love. I think it's a great transition again. I don't know much about it, but I know looking on your site, you have this Be a Tree.
Yes.
I love what you're doing, at least on the surface from someone that just kind of took a glance at it. Tell the listeners about that.
So Be a Tree is the nonprofit version of Shazier Coaching and Consulting. So what I do with Be a Tree is I offer my professional development training to teenagers and young adults. And again, I worked in retail restaurant space for almost 15 years. And I've had employees from 16 to 83, right? And one of the things that I learned is kind of unfortunate, but I would meet adults who their whole life, no one had ever told them that they were proud of them. I would invite them for lunch and they wouldn't understand just dining etiquette, things like that. But it's not their fault. Nobody really taught them. And they just kind of made it into adulthood without knowing. And so with Be a Tree, which the slogan I kind of use is, we provide shade for others. Like we throw shade, but we throw shade in a good way. Like we're a covering, we're a blessing to young adults and teenagers to kind of teach them the workforce skills and professional development skills they need to enter the workforce. And so I've done some mentoring. I did a youth program with Career Source of Central Florida. And I created a whole 4.5 week curriculum where I'm teaching them interviewing skills, how to write their resume, their elevator pitch. Biggest thing, what their strengths are. Mm. So many teenagers and adults that I've met in my career can tell you what their weaknesses are because it's been said to them multiple times, but they can't articulate what they're good at. And so teaching them how to articulate their strengths in a confident manner. So that's what Be a Tree does and I have a group of friends and I'm always recruiting mentors to really help educate and teach that next generation and just kind of throw some shade for them.
I love throwing shade. And again, we have Doris Jackson-Shazier. If you're in her area, Clermont, Florida, again, check out ShazierCoachingConsult.com. I just love the concept of Be a Tree. Any books that you recommend for a listener that maybe, I'll just leave it open at that. I won't give you any guidance. Any books that you recommend right now?
Okay, so one of my favorite books to recommend, irregardless of genre, is Goliath Must Fall. Louis, I can't remember his last name. It starts with a G. I think it's Gigolo. But he's a pastor. And Goliath Must Fall is just an interesting book and spin on the David and Goliath story. But it talks about the Goliaths in our lives, whether it's anger, whether it's comfort, whether it's the spirit of rejection. But I just love how he attacks these things that sometimes hold us back in life. And how do you kind of eradicate them? So it is a Christian book, but it's one of my favorite books. I find myself mentioning it to people often. He has a second book called Don't Give the Devil a Seat at Your Table. And again, another powerful book that talks about how we allow things to bother us. And how do we have better control or over the way we think about things. But those two books, they're easy read, but I believe they're powerful and they transcend the business world and parenting. If you can take what you need from that, it'll help in all areas.
Great tips. Well, I think we're at a great point to end with our last question. And John Alston has a quote that I love. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And you're a young woman and let's give you another 60, 70 years of living. And you're on your deathbed now and you're surrounded by all those who have been in your life and they're just providing you with all this love and you're getting ready to take your last breath. What is it that you want to leave behind with the people that are still going to be here?
Oh, I mean, that's a powerful one to think of. Like on
It is.
a,
It
you
is.
painted a whole picture there. I definitely will have several books here for them to read. That's the game plan. I know that I'll be leaving quite a few books for them to remember me by, my thought process and my mindset. But I would pray that at that time when I am exiting this world, that I am remembered for the way that I've loved others. I hope to leave a world that's better than the one that I found. I hope to leave a world that that feels a generation of people who feel equipped to lead. That's
Mm.
what I want to leave here. A generation of people that feel equipped to lead. Because I would have built some solid leaders.
That's a sentence. I'm writing that one down. Man, all right. Hey, well, we're ready to get out of here. Anything else you want to feel like we missed or you want to share or highlight for the listeners?
I think what I would like to highlight is number one, you as a host, you've asked some very thoughtful questions. I am so very grateful. And thank you for just asking the right type of questions to help just highlight who I am and what I do and God's grace. Like, I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's so much fun to do this, and I'm getting goosebumps again. Yeah, I really look forward to this, and it's an honor to get to research people and then to have a conversation with them and share space, and then for you to touch my life, and I'm always taking tips from the guests, and got 2.5 pages of notes that I'm taking from you. So yeah, so thank you so much for all that you're doing. And continue to do. And I wish you so much success. Again, listeners, I've been telling you, ShazierCoachingConsult.com, DorisJackson-Shazier.com to check out her book. She'll sign it for you. Normally my Pasho gets us out, but thank you again, listeners. Boom, baby. That just happened. We out.